Okay, boys and girls, as I promised you, I was going to have a guest reader tonight, and tonight it is going to be Coach Carino.
Hello, boys and girls. Hope everybody's having a great day. We are freezing in Amarillo. Let me just set this down, get comfortable. Nice. I hope everybody's nice and cozy. Chapter 13, Racing in the Rain. Denny had started to act oddly. The clues were all there. I simply hadn't read them correctly. Over the winter, he had played a video racing game obsessively, which wasn't like him. He had never gotten into racing games, but that winter, he played the game every night after Eve went to bed, and he raced on American circuits only, St. Petersburg and Laguna Seca, Road Atlanta, and Mid-Ohio. I should have known just from seeing the tracks he was racing. He wasn't playing a video game. He was studying the circuits. He was learning turning points and braking points. I had heard him talk about how accurate the backgrounds are on these video games, how drivers have found the games can be quite helpful for getting acquainted with new racetracks. But I never thought, and his diet, no alcohol, no sugar, no fried foods. His exercise routine running several days a week, swimming at the Medgar Evers pool, and lifting weights in the garage of the big guy down the street. Denny had been preparing himself. He was lean and strong and ready to do battle in a race car. And I had missed all the signs. But then, I believe I had been duped. Because when he came downstairs with his track bag, packed that day in March, and his suitcase on wheels, and his special helmet, Eve and Zoe seemed to know all about his leaving. He had told them, he hadn't told me. The parting was strange. Zoe was both excited and nervous. Eve was somber and was utterly confused. Where was he going? I raised my eyebrows, lifted my ears, and cocked my head. I used every facial gesture at my disposal in an attempt to glean information. Sebring, he said to me, reading my mind the way he does sometimes. I took the seat in the touring car. Didn't I tell you? The touring car, but that was something he said he could never do. We agreed on that. I was at once happy and sad. He would be away so much of the time. I was worried about the emotional well-being of those of us left behind. But I am a racer at heart, and a racer will never let something that has already happened affect what is happening now. I wagged my tail enthusiastically, and he smiled at me with a twinkle in his eye. He knew that I understood everything he said. Be good now, he said playfully. Watch over the girls. He hugged little Zoe and kissed Eve gently, but as he turned away from her, she launched herself into his chest and grabbed him tight. She buried herself in his shoulder, her face red with tears. Please come back, she said, her words muffled by his mask. Of course I will, I promise, he said hopefully. After he had gone, Eve closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, she looked at me, and I could see that she had resolved something for herself as well. I insisted he do it, she said to me. I think it would be good for me. It will make me stronger. That was the first race of the series, and the race didn't go well for Denny. Though it went fine for Eve, Zoe, and me, we watched it on TV. And Denny qualified in the top third of the field. But shortly into the race, he had to return to the pit because of a cut tire. Then a crew member had trouble mounting the new wheel, and by the time Denny returned to the race, he was a lap down and never recovered. 24th place. Denny was extremely frustrated. The following few races ended in the same way, a very poor finish. I like the guys, he told us at dinner when he was home for a stretch. They're good people, but they're not a good pit crew. They're making mistakes, killing our season. If they would just give me a chance to finish, I'd finish well. Can't you get a new crew? Eve asked. I was in the kitchen next to the dining room. I never stayed in the dining room when they ate, out of respect. No one likes a dog under the table looking for crumbs when they're eating. So I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. Then he picked up the wooden salad bowl and serving himself more salad, Zoe pushing her chicken nuggets around on the plate. Eat them, honey, Eve said. Don't play with them. It's not the quality of the man, Denny tried to explain. It's the quality of the team. How do you fix it? Eve asked. You're spending so much time away, it seems like a waste. What's the point of racing if you can't finish? Zoe, you've only had 2 bites. Eat. The crunching of romaine, Zoe drinking from her sippy cup. Practice, Denny said. Practice, practice, practice. When will you practice? They want me to go down to Sonoma next week, work with Apex, Porsche people at Infineon. Work hard with the pit crew so there are no mistakes. The sponsors are getting frustrated. Eve fell silent. Next week is your week off, she said, finally. I won't be gone long. 3 or 4 days, good salad. Did you make the dressing yourself? I couldn't read their body language because I couldn't see them. But there are some things a dog can sense. Tension, fear, anxiety. From my position on the kitchen floor, I could sense Eve's anger. Clearly, she had steeled herself for Danny's racing absences. She was not prepared for his practices in Sonoma, and she was angry and afraid. I heard chair leg scrape as a chair was pushed back. I heard plates being stacked, flatware nervously gathered. Eat your nuggets, Eve said again, this time sternly. I'm full, Zoe declared. You haven't eaten anything. How can you be full? said Eve. I don't like nuggets. You're not leaving the table until you eat your nuggets. I don't like nuggets, Zoe shrieked, and suddenly the world was a very dark place. Anxiety, anticipation, excitement, all these emotions have a distinctive smell, many of which were coming from the dining room at that moment. After a long silence, Denny said, I'll make her a hot dog. No, you won't. She likes the nuggets. She's just doing this because you're here. I'm not making a new dinner every time she decides she doesn't like something. She asked for the nuggets. Now she'll eat the nuggets. Fury has a very distinctive smell too. Zoe started to cry. I went to the door and looked in. Eve was standing at the head of the table, her face red and pinched. Zoe was sobbing into her nuggets. Denny stood to make himself seem bigger. It's important for the head of a pack to be bigger. Often just acting tough can get a member of the pack to back down. You're overreacting, he said. Why don't you go lie down and let me finish up here? You always take her side, Eve barked. I just want her to have a dinner she'll eat. Fine, Eve hissed. I'll make her a hot dog then. Eve whirled from the table and almost crushed me when she burst into the kitchen. She threw open the freezer door and snatched a package of hot dogs. She grabbed a knife, the block, and stabbed into the package. And that's when the evening turned really bad, as if the knife had a will of its own. The blade leapt from the frozen package and sliced deep and clean into Eve's left palm, between her thumb and fingers. The knife clattered into the sink, and Eve grabbed her hand with a wail. Watery drops of blood speckled the counter. Denny was there in a moment with a dishcloth. Let me see it, he said, peeling the blood-soaked cloth from her hand, which she held by her wrist as if it were no longer a part of her body, but some alien creature that had attacked her. We should take you to the hospital, he said. No, she bellowed. No hospital. You need stitches, he said, examining the gushing wound. She didn't answer immediately, but her eyes were filled with tears. Not from pain, but from fear. She was so afraid of doctors and hospitals, she was afraid that she might go in and they would never let her out. Please, she whispered to Denny. Please, no hospital. He groaned and shook his head. I'll see if I can close it, he said. Zoe stood next to me, silent, eyes wide, holding a chicken nugget, watching. Neither of us knew what to do. Zoe, baby, Denny said, can you find the bandages for me in the hall closet? We'll get Mommy all patched up, okay? When Zoe returned with the box of bandages, she didn't know where her parents had gone, so I walked her to the bathroom door and barked. Denny opened the door a crack and took the bandages. Thanks, Zoe. I'll take care of Mommy now. You can go play or watch TV. He closed the door. Zoe looked at me for a moment with concern in her eyes, and I wanted to help her. I walked toward the living room and looked back. She still hesitated, so I went to go get her. I nudged her and tried again. This time she followed me. I sat before the television and waited for her to turn it on, which she did. And we watched Kids Next Door, and then Denny and Eve appeared. They saw us watching TV together. and they seemed somehow relieved. They sat next to Zoe and watched along with us, not saying a word. When the show was over, Eve pressed the mute button on the remote. "The cut isn't very bad," she said to Zoe. "If you're still hungry, I can make you a hot dog." Zoe shook her head.